and welcome to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. A little bit later on, I'll be joined by Rachel Graham to discuss the Ireland women's squad named for next week's double header against Poland. But to begin today, we have to go back to the painful memory that we left while I was sitting in the airport in Prague Friday, almost a couple of weeks ago now, which is, of course, after the World Cup playoff semi-final penalty shootout defeat to Czechia. And to sift through that before we get into the League of Ireland, I'm joined by Conan Byrne in studio and also Graham Gartland on Zoom. How are you, lads?
Good, Raf. How are you?
Not too bad at all. Very much recovered emotionally and otherwise from Prague. But after all of that, Conan, and you know what you saw in Prague, and then obviously the friendly against North Macedonia, we've got a Nations League campaign to come in the autumn, some friendlies as well between now and then. Are you optimistic or pessimistic in terms of where this Irish senior team is going at the moment?
A bit of both, Raf, if I'm being honest. Optimistic in the sense that where the squad is at in terms of their ages, and like the likes of Darragh O'Shea, Nathan Collins, Troy Parrott coming into their prime, so to speak. And it's important that we utilise that, they stay injury free. And I think that's really important over the next couple of months, ahead of our Nations League campaign in the autumn. We've 3 friendlies coming up against Grenada, Qatar, and
a fourth one. I think they're trying to line up.
They're trying to organise another one, and Canada as well. And my worry with that is that we really struggle to break down teams that we should beat, and the fact that fans would expect victories in 2 of those 3 games anyway. Canada is going to be a tough ask, but when you come up against those teams, we find it difficult to break them down. Now, I'm very optimistic about the connection between the fans and the fans and the players and the squad. I think that disconnect was there for quite a while. It seems to be back now because of the results and the performances of the team over the last few weeks. But the heartache is still there, Raf, from that defeat to Czechia for sure, and that might take some time to get over.
Yeah, and I think there was a bit of feel of that. Like, I was working on the North Macedonia game. I was in the Aviva on the day, and obviously it was a bit of a flat performance, obviously a 0-0 draw at the end. But after the press conference, Heimir Hallgrimsson took the newspaper journalists and then some of the written press, including myself, into a dressing room just for an embargoed section, but also was an opportunity for him to show us some slides and also some stats about where the team has been kind of heading. So, Graham, I'm just going to read out just what Heimir Hallgrimsson said, and people can read the piece on rte.ie/sport. It would have been published last Thursday. But what he did say was set plays. We talked about this before the Czech game because they were one of the best in Europe. In attacking corners, we had 47% first contact in our games. This is prior to the playoff. They had 55%. We had scored 2 goals. They had scored 6 goals in a campaign. Similar with defending corners. We had 36% first contact defending corners. They had 56%. We had conceded 3 goals. They had conceded 1 goal. And this was the game against Czechia. Attacking corners, 66%, ours first contact. Defending corners, 50%, our contact. Defensive duels, 71%, ours. All metrics in running, sprinting have improved. There is a correlation statistically. If you do more running, you win more games. And then fast attacking, forward thinking, a lot of things we have improved there tactically, but most of all, how we penetrate lines. And then he sort of benchmarked that against some of the leading teams in Europe. And from his point of view, the stats show that we are, that we compare well. But Graham, just on the eye test, when, the stats are laid out, there are clear improvements there. But in the eye test, you see much of a improvement from prior to November to the way it looks now.
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think defending set pieces are a bit better. I think we defend the edge of our box a lot better in terms of giving up long distance shots. I think we were really struggled with that before and conceded a lot of goals. I'd be big on the distances between your units. I think we're better at that as well. I don't think our midfield gets separated a little bit too much from our back four. I think that gap has been closed, but also allows you then that when you do transition to win the ball back, we're in passing distance. It's not just, we're knocking it as long as we can, and it becomes a 50-50 game with you're hoping the striker can do something, but with not a lot of support. So the distance between our midfield in terms of support and our strikers is better as well. It's great to see that they're running more, because I think you can actually see that. I think you can see the endeavour. I agree 100% with Conan on the connection. I think it was lost for a while. How they've built that connection is they've done it. They care. the players showed he cared and the fans showed he cared, and that's massive. And then that brings that connection. Then that actually this means something to the players, and then the fans are saying, well, it means something. It means a lot to us as well. And that connection has come back, especially over the Portuguese and the Hungary game. So all of them make for it to be positive going forward. I think Conan's point about the age profile is really good. I think that's where the game against North Macedonia was good for the young players getting caps, to bring them in and be a part of it. Just that as they're still meeting some of the players that are still involved, the likes of Séamus Coleman, they're around him for a camp as well, and you get to know how to carry themselves. And as a young player, you learn off your peers more so than probably sometimes your coaches in terms of how you behave. So you're always watching. So yeah, I do think it is positive. But again, how they bring that on is they win the games they're expected to win, and they perform in the games they're expected to perform, and then what comes out of the bigger games will come out. Sometimes you're going to come up against quality, and some teams just have moments where they can score against you from a quality player. But in terms of competing, I think we have got better in them metrics. I think we're better at competing in set pieces. We're better at competing in the games. We're better in our duels. We're better in our running distances. So all of that is improvement. And if we can keep adding as much quality to the squad as we can, I think, yeah, it is a positive.
And do you feel also, the fact that there is this focus on set plays, that actually the fact that the wider narrative of the game now seems more accepting of that style of play compared to maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where it was all about playing out from the back, and that was the pressure that was being put on managers, that has changed now, that actually Heimir can benefit in a certain sense?
Yeah, I think it's one of those. It's because it's become a trend in the last 3 seasons, especially with obviously what Arsenal are doing. If you don't look into it, you don't study it, you don't make it better, you're probably not prepared as well as you should. And so the demand is there that you do it, because the game has changed towards how important they are. Like that, it was considered important for the lesser teams 20 years ago when you were competing against the stronger teams. Now the stronger teams are, look, we can be really good at this as well, and we're also good on the ball. Again, like the style of play that Ireland has, we have to develop our own style of play that suits us and our players, rather than, well, we want to be better. Everybody wants to be better on the ball, but we have to run forward, play forward, and we have to transition with pace, and then we have to be willing to go, right, well, we're either going to press for certain times, or if that press doesn't work, it's okay to drop off and then defend in a low block, because sometimes other teams just put you into a low block. I remember Damien Duff said that a few years ago. When you come up against a really good possession team, it'd be naive to keep your 2 strikers up the pitch and not have them drop in and help. Like, so sometimes good teams will force you into that, but then what's our plan to get out of a low block once we win the ball back? And again, there's improvements and all of that. But yeah, I think in terms of preparation, you have to do all your prep work on your set pieces, because they are so important for and against. And if you're not doing it, you're not prepared and right, and the game is sort of edging towards that, where you can challenge a manager and go, well, you haven't really prepared for this. And I think preparation allows you to perform, and I think that's what they've done in the last few games. I thought the first half an hour against Czechia, Ireland were really good. I actually was delighted, because they went and just took the game to a team away from home. They didn't sit back. They scored the goals, hit the crossbar. They were on the front foot all the time, and I thought, oh, fair play, like, because everybody was saying it's a tough fixture away from home, and they just went and took them on, and that was the bit that I loved. I loved that bravery to come out of the traps, but it's just a shame we couldn't get over the line in the end. Yeah, of course, the penalty that they got in the first half, very shortly after we got the second, obviously changed things. But goals in the game on set pieces, roughly.
Yeah,
like 2 penalties, a corner and a free kick, so you're like the 4 goals were set pieces.
Yeah, it was something Heimir mentioned in that sort of dressing room briefing as well, that, when you actually look back on that Czech game, it was all set pieces. Graham mentioned Séamus Coleman before, and obviously no one's going to begrudge him one way or the other what decision he makes on his future. But for you, how important is he going forward? Heimir has been very clear he wants him to stay on until Euro 2028 if possible. But of course, age is always it's a difficult thing. He's going to be 38 later in the year, and as I said, it'll be his decision to make. But for you, do you still feel it's fundamental that he remains part of the picture?
Without a shadow of a doubt, Raf, I do think he should stay part, even if he's not involved as a player. I do think, just going from the kind of the way he was after the North Macedonia game, having his 3 kids there, it just sensed that was his last appearance in an Irish shirt, if I'm being completely honest. But it doesn't mean that it should be his last appearance in an Ireland team setup. I think it'd be crazy that if he did hang up his boots, that he's not involved in some way, because he's such a leader, somebody that we don't have. And I'd go as far as to say is that a leader that would be fit for any team maybe in the 80s and 90s, when it was all about leadership in a dressing room. Nowadays that's kind of gone a little bit. But with Séamus Coleman, you have somebody there that will tell you when you're doing something wrong, but also will have an arm around your shoulder and push you forward and get you to the next step. And I think he's going to be, like, even just look at his ability. Hasn't played many minutes of football over the course of the season, but Everton comes in and puts in incredible performances for Ireland, because it means so much to him. And I think players need to see that, players need to hear that, and he'll be a huge loss on the pitch, but can't lose him away from the dressing room, no way.
Yeah, and as Graham said, an influence on the young players, whether that ultimately becomes a coaching role in the future, or whether he stays on in a playing sense. But some of the younger players coming through, Harvey Vale is newer, obviously just qualified, and then play a couple of cameos in both the game in Prague, and then a longer one against North Macedonia. First impressions of him, QPR, he is quite impressive. I've watched a few of their games recently, and very good in terms of his crossing and on that left foot as well.
Yeah, he's very versatile. He can play in a number of positions. At Bristol Rovers, he played at left back. And I know a lot of people are referring to him as an Ashley Cole in that position. But look, I'd be still of the opinion that we're playing international football, and we're talking about a mid-table championship player coming to play for Ireland. I don't like putting too much pressure on players only 22 years of age. He has potential, absolutely, 100%. But in order for him to achieve something special at international level, he does need to be playing at a higher level, in my opinion. But he has all the talent. He captained the England under-19s to the Euros 4 years ago. Was named in team of the tournament. He's all his attributes are there. I just feel at international football, you need to be playing at the highest level in order to succeed and to do really well. Time will tell for that, but yeah, definitely potential. Yeah,
and Graham, do you see a similar view in terms of Bosun Lawal, who finally made his Ireland debut in that North Macedonia game? A good few touches in that sort of number 6 position that he was put on, but the only thing watching him for Stoke over the bank holiday weekend on the Friday, he's playing on the right side of a back three for Stoke. Yesterday he's playing on the left of a back three, but conspicuously not in that sort of number 6 role. Is it a case that he really needs to be playing in that role more regularly at club for the benefit of Ireland?
Yeah, I do. I think midfield, especially central position, it's a 360 game where as a centre back you're generally looking in at it for the majority of it, and I think that awareness is massive, and the awareness dictates what touches you take, where you're playing, you know, how you roll, all them things that it needs to be really, really sharp, because in the middle of the pitch there's just bodies everywhere at times, and they're going to come and close you from different directions. So you need to have that awareness, and then once your awareness is there, has he got the technical ability to allow him to manipulate the ball and play where he wants. Athletically, he's been excellent. He always has big long strides. Physically, really the man. Physically really there in the games, but again, if it can play more in centre midfield, it's one that you can look at, that you could play him beside Josh Cullen and know that you have power and legs there as well. And then obviously defensively, you know he's going to be strong as a centre midfielder, because he has that experience of playing at the back, and he knows how to screen. He knows what the centre backs need from a midfielder in front of him. But in terms of in possession, then if you are going to really get what Conan's saying is get to a really high level, you need to be playing in that position in order for that to transfer into international football. But I was delighted to see them come on and play and make their debuts, and because we keep mentioning Séamus is going to be a loss, and 100%. But it's important that you start bringing players in underneath it to fill in these spots of the players that are either moving on or even just out of form, and that competition would bring. Competition is healthy in a squad, because it pushes everybody to be at their best and their maximum, and that's what it's about then, maximum performances all the time.
Yeah, and in terms of building that depth, Jack Moylan's promotion with Lincoln probably is going to help in that in that case, sort of in the sort of attacking midfield forward area. Also Josh Honan at Lincoln as well, although he hasn't played yet due to injury. But let's talk League of Ireland now. And obviously it was a double weekend, Friday, Monday, but let's just give the context to the Friday games first, where Drogheda United and Bohs drew 0-0. Dundalk were 3-2 winners away at Shells. Pats 4-1 winners over Sligo Rovers after coming from behind. And Waterford and Shamrock Rovers drawn 1-1, and then Galway United in a really good game, beating Derry 2-1. But Graham, something you've often said is you hit the magic 10 in the table before you start trying to give a bit of shape to how it's going to look, and we have hit the magic 10 games at this stage. So in terms of title race, the battle for Europe, and then the relegation battle as well, what's the shape of it now from your point of view?
I still think Shamrock Rovers are favourites. I think Bohs and Pats are in it. Pats are in it because going forward and the goals are scored. They've 18 goals this year. Dundalk, in fairness, I'll talk about Dundalk in a minute, but we scored 18 goals. Rovers have scored 16, but Bohs have only conceded 4. But for Bohs to stay in the title race, they need to score more goals, and they need to score more goals at important times. When I looked at the game and the highlights of it, Whelan scores the penalty, brilliant taking penalty, and I think not long after he has a header that he should score. And again, it's about scoring important goals. And Whelan he can be streaky at times, where he'll score a goal, a hat-trick in a game, and he might win 4-0. And I'm like, look, every goal is important, but some goals are more important than others. And a winner in a 2-1 when you're chasing a game to give you 3 points at home can be more important than a 12 goal in a 4-0 win. And that's the bit that I think, if they can get to that. And they've done it a little bit. Hickey scored against Galway to win 1-0 late on with a header. But if they can add more goals, I think they can stay in it, because defensively they're strong. Had to be disappointed down to Dundalk and losing after a great 4-1 victory against Sligo. But again, they had chances in the game, they just didn't take them. Dundalk were ruthless with their chances, and in fairness to them, they're flying. But I think it's probably between them three, Bohs, Rovers and Pats, but I still think Rovers are favourites. And Monday night just sums that up. Like, Pats go away and lose, Bohs draw at home, and then Rovers win at home against Shells in a game that you're like, right, even though they drew on the Friday, you go and just cement the victory on the Monday night, and it puts them 1 point off Pats and Bohs. And they probably still haven't hit their form yet, and they've got a lot of young players on the pitch yesterday. They've chopped and changed their starting 11 to keep everybody fresh. But I think that'll keep them fresh for the rest of the fixtures, on the European campaign as well.
Yeah, and just in terms of the Shamrock Rovers game, just to focus on that, so a 3-2 win over Shelbourne, but they're trailing 1-0, not playing well, and then it's a very innocuous sort of foul by Kerr McEnroy on Graham Burke, and the game just flips from there.
Yeah, and like all the goals that Rovers scored, avoidable from Michelle's point of view, 2 set pieces and a mistake at the back, and that's where Joey O'Brien will be livid. And they are missing centre backs. Paddy Barrett's injured. The lad he brought down from the north is injured as well, the centre back. So like that, that's the leadership they're missing from Paddy Barrett in that sense. But I'd be disappointed in the keeper dropping it as well, and just like frustration, because I actually thought the first half an hour, I thought Shells were excellent. I thought they moved the ball really well around. The build-up play was really good. The first goal is excellent. They got bodies forward. But Joey would be livid with. I did think from just before half-time, I thought Rovers up the tempo. And when Rovers came out at half-time and the tempo was a lot higher, they got after Shells a bit more and pressed them. And it ultimately led to the goals they got. But yeah, from Joey's point of view, disappointing, because again, first set piece, you can't leave Lopez spin around the back. I know they go zonal on the edge of the box, but somebody needs to know that you have to cover certain areas, and that was a big area for them to cover. Rossi with the second chance just doesn't move his feet, and Noonan's just opportunistic and gets a toe poke on it, and you go from being 1-0 up and looking like they're doing really well to 2-1 down, and it was a big blow. I thought they rallied really well at the end, but you can't be conceding 3 goals in a game and expect to win it, especially away from home. You conceded 3 against Dundalk on Friday night as well, so that's 6 goals in 2 games. And the goals are avoidable, and that's where I think Joe's frustration lies.
Yeah, obviously Spiel with the error for the third goal, although it's sort of made obviously by Jake Mulroney, that moment on the wing where it seems like it's gone out for a second, but he keeps it in and leads to a chance, leads to the corner, etc. But the set piece issue has been something that's been dogging Shells a little bit, because I remember even that Pats game where they lost, but all 3 goals basically came as essentially either from a direct set piece in or from sort of a second ball.
I think over half the goals they've conceded 15. I think over half of them have come from set pieces, which would be really disappointing from Michelle's point of view. And the 3, like Graham said on last night, the 3 goals were completely unavoidable. You see Lopez having the time and space of Tala to put the ball in the back of the net for the first goal, and then Ibsen Rossi is, like you said, just lack of concentration, lack of focus, taking his eye off the ball, letting it go through, and Noonan does what Noonan does best, and like Graham says, very opportunistic to put the ball in the back of the net. Third goal was so avoidable, just again not keeping your eye on the ball. Spiel came in last season, probably one of the best goalkeepers in the league, and then Burke finishes it from that mistake. But like, I was very impressed with how Shells played in the game, but it's just those moments that are causing some serious issues, and it needs to be rectified and rectified quick.
Yeah, and just a word on Razi, Graham, just in terms of obviously he's made a couple of sub appearances now. I remember a few years ago when he was part of that 17 squad of the Euros, you were talking about, I suppose, what he's like as a personality, what he's like as a talent. Went away to Italy, didn't quite work out. Like a lot of our young players who've gone to Italy, it hasn't necessarily worked out, but he's back now and a chance to build.
Yeah, look, I know people have spoken about this before. Italy's a really tough environment to go for young players,
including for Italians, as we've seen from the World Cup playoffs.
Exactly, they don't overly emphasise new products, and they don't give them a lot of time or a lot of patience, and they actually don't give them a lot of care at times. I know firsthand from a couple of players that you can discard them, and it is tough when you're away, and obviously it's not his first language, all that stuff that goes with it, but it's great to see him. He actually took the chance and reached out to Rovers, and Rovers went, yeah, no problem, and he's been there since he's probably 7 or 8. So, but it's great to see him and back, and if he can get moving as well as he used to, and keep himself fit and as strong as he possibly can, Naj will do well. Like, Naj, a really, really clever footballer, technically excellent, plays off both feet, has an inner drive about him. But it's great to see him come back, because in that 17s tournament he was excellent. And he's really well thought of in the Ireland setup because of how he carried himself around that tournament. He got himself really fit for it, and I think if he can just reignite that, and he's I explained how he is as a kid, because all his friends will come and watch in Tala. He nearly goes, well, I have to show them I'm still able to play. Like, he has that little bit about him as well. It was great to see. Look, John O'Sullivan came on as well, another wonderful player. Went on loan to Drogheda the last year. Like, physically, they're unbelievable left foot. Brilliant player. You see Corey O'Sullivan doing unbelievably well. They were all in the same team growing up. So, in fairness to Rovers, they had a lot of young players on the pitch last night, and then you had Shelbourne bring on James Roach, who would have been a couple of years younger than them, and they all came through at the same time. So it is great to see the young players come through, especially in such a pivotal game, and how big it was. Like Rovers v Shells at home, and all these young players are being given chances to play. And look, they're playing with really experienced players that will help and they learn off as well. So yeah, it was good for both teams to see the young players come in and get minutes.
Yeah, and Sligo Rovers, Derry City, that was a 0-0 draw last night, or yesterday evening, up at the showground. So both sides hit the woodwork. Winchester from long range, and then Gareth McElroy from a header after a corner for Sligo. But for Derry, let's go back to the defeat at Galway first, and actually to a social media post from James McClean. Actually, there's a couple of social media posts I need to go through here, Conan. But first one was in regard to missing, obviously, the Galway game through injury, and there were a few doubters on social media as to whether he was injured or not, but he hit back fairly quickly. Picture this is based off a picture he'd already posted of himself in a boxing ring, but as he points out, and I'll read it out verbatim, he says in the social media post, "Let's clear this garbage with facts of the matter. the picture that was taken of himself in the boxing, this was not this morning. The injury is a long-standing chronic injury that affects being able to run. And in the picture, of course, he's in a boxing ring, so there's no running being done there, which he clearly points out. And the call was made by medical specialists. And the fourth one I can't read fully, but it just says F off. So you can probably understand what that means. And then he added a personal favourite, though, quotes, he refused to play, laughing face emoji, crying laughing face emoji, and then added half-wits. I think I can probably say that word on here. But the other social media post was from this morning, and this was sort of more on, I suppose, the league itself and pitches. He said the lack of funding the league gets is evident week in, week out on how awful all the playing surfaces are. As a league, we are so far behind, it's insane and sad, really. PS result today was poor also. Better investment equals better pitches, better facilities, better academies, and then in brackets, some clubs don't even have academies. Better, stronger league. Ultimately, having all of the above, therefore, can only give the national team also a much better chance of succeeding. So quite a lot there, but just on the second part in terms of pitches, I think we all know the story in regards to the facilities in the country, but it probably helps that a player like James McClean is there and can garner column inches by what he actually says, given his status, Conan.
Yeah, you could take that in two parts, Raf. He's still a player.
Yeah.
So I'd be of the opinion that he probably shouldn't be saying so much stuff on social media and concentrate on the pitch and his teammates and trying to get wins on the board. They haven't won in 6 games, 1 win in 9. And yeah, James McClean has done fantastic working throughout his career on the football pitch. And yes, he garners columns in newspapers and publications, and he's right with what he's saying about the pitches. But the other point is that we've come a long way in League of Ireland over the last number of years, in terms of fans coming to the grounds, in terms of infrastructure, and there's a long way to go. But it can't just happen overnight. It's taken small steps, and we'd all love the best pitches and the best stadiums in the country. But our calendar year, the way it goes, is obviously from February to October. We had the worst winter we've probably ever had in a long time, with all the rain. So that's going to hamper some pitches over the next couple of weeks and months. So it's hard for me to kind of condone to be negative on James, considering what he's done for the country and in the international jersey, over 100 caps. But sometimes I feel that when players start saying stuff on social media, it's just too much. Just concentrate on being a Derry City player. You're only back in the club a couple of months. Just focus on that, focus on your teammates, and focus on getting wins. Yeah,
no, he was back against Sligo, Graham, but just going back to the Galway game first, which was obviously the defeat at Eamon DC Park, and there were neither of the McCleans played that day. Michael Duffy was out, as he was also against Sligo as well, but there's been sort of a focus on McClean in midfield, etc., and sort of the cohesion of the team, yet he's not in it, and some of the same issues sort of have persisted even in that particular game.
Yeah, they were really sloppy in the build-up play. It didn't look like they haven't. I don't want to use the word patterns, or a philosophy of how they're going to play, or a principle of how they're going to play out in the back. It was a little bit ad hoc, and you were clipping out the fullbacks or the wing backs under a lot of pressure, and then you're like, I didn't see anything by design. That you thought, right, they're trying to walk that one, and obviously you have options. You go, option 1 is this, option 2 is that, option 3 is that. I didn't see any of that, and then that just gave Galway impetus to go, right, we're going to nick it, and they nicked it in midfield, and they counter-attacked really well from there up. And in fairness to Galway, then you get a goal off a set piece. It was a set piece. A free kick hits the wall, and Harvey comes on and cracks it with his right foot. I thought, when I seen it, I thought he's just swung on that because he obviously has nothing else to do, and he's worried about a counter-attack as well. And he said that after the game in the interview. He says, I just thought I better hit it, just see where it ends up. And it was a brilliant strike, in fairness to him. But the bit for me in the game that worried me from a Derry point of view was Clark goes through the gears in the second half, to start the second half, and he was excellent, and he set up a couple of chances and he scored a goal, had a wonderful assist, and Depot missed. Brilliant assist, takes on his chest, flicks it, and I thought, right. And then it was around that time you take off Mackey and put on Winchester, and you're like, okay, that's a defensive midfielder for an attacking midfielder. And then John Caulfield just goes right and brings on Lomboto and Franz Pero. And the signs of intent from both managers was John Caulfield's like, we're going to go and win this. And the last half an hour of the game, last 25 minutes, Galway just went for it. And he done it in a controlled manner, but their intensity was much higher. They had chances, they broke on the counter-attack. And everything they done just had a greater intensity and intent to it. And Galway fully deserved to win the game. And that was the worry for me, was like, right, you've got to go back, you've been one down, and then you can go and win the game and go like, not go gung-ho, but just keep doing what you're doing, exerting pressure, keep playing through James Clark, get on the ball. And they just didn't. They just came off the game a little bit and allowed Derry just to be back in, Galway just to come back into the game. And Galway fully deserved their victory. Like, they'd more chances, they'd more shots on goal, the possession stats were lower, but what they done with the ball was a lot greater, and they had a lot greater intent in the attacking phase than Derry did.
Yeah, and Clark obviously came up with that individual goal against Galway, and obviously really well taken. Probably indicative, though, that it's more of a solo goal, Conan, which probably suggests what Graham is saying there. There wasn't really any patterns. But the other thing, Darren Markey, obviously a huge talent we've seen for Drogheda over the last number of years, but hasn't quite hit it off at Derry as of yet.
No, we got injured in pre-season or just at the start of the season, and it's taken him a while to get up to speed. You see, with Dara, he's just energy. He's all energy, all running all over the place. But with Derry, they're trying to play a system where they're just all in set positions. But with Drogheda, he had the freedom to go and chase things down, played in nearly given a free roll at times with Dara. But when he goes to a team like Derry City, it's a new environment for him. And if you look back over the years and see the amount of Dublin players that actually succeed when they go up to Derry, there's very few of them that do. But I'm hoping that now it'll just take time for him to settle in and he'll kick on, because he's a wonderful footballer, very creative in what he does. As I said, he's just all energy. Does need to work on his finishing. There's been times where he's been in great positions in games and he hasn't been able to finish them off, and his goals will speak for themselves. But I think it's again a player that needs time to settle, and Darragh will do well. Yeah, from the flip side,
playing him out of position a little bit that I've seen him from what he did at Drogheda. He played in a 2 at Drogheda, and he was like Coleman said, he brought the energy up and down. His interceptions were brilliant. He wasn't the biggest tackler in the world, but he intercepted a lot of things, and he was really good at taking the ball under pressure. But they're playing him like with 2 10s with him and Clark, and like, but it's not really his position, because he's taking his ball. He's taking the ball. He's back to goal, or he's back to the sideline, and he's probably better with the game in front of him a little bit.
He likes that free roll, Graham.
What's that? Sorry,
he likes that free roll.
Yeah, but it was with Drogheda. I remember him playing, like, even in the cup final, he played in a 2, but was like, he's the runner. He's the one that will go up and down. But I just don't see. I don't see that. I think he's playing a little bit too high for Derry, and it's not letting him get involved in the build-up play. And I give you that freedom once the ball goes forward. I know what you were saying. Once the ball goes forward, go and help and be free in that sense. But I think he's already in there when the ball's coming, and it's just hindering him a little bit, like, you know.
Yeah, and just on the Sligo equation of the goalless, of that goalless draw, obviously a clean sheet, which is a positive. But again, we spoke about it with Alan Cawley a couple of weeks ago, just before Prague, that the lack of goals is an issue, and where that stems from. Sometimes, obviously, we know Owen Elding is away doing great things at Hibs now, but sometimes the source of that is not necessarily who you have up front. It can be an issue further back.
Yeah, it's about build-up play and getting results. But like, they've only won 1 game all season, home win against Drogheda, and you'd worry for Sligo. Kind of fortunate that Waterford are doing a little bit more poorly than them, with Waterford not having a win this season. But again, when Sligo lose somebody like Owen Elding, and you're trying to replace that with somebody that's never played in the league before, and I've said this since I've played myself, when players seem to come over here and think that it's going to be all rosy, it's going to be a nice and easy league for me to develop and move on and get a better move. It does not work like that. It is a completely different league to what they're used to. It's hustle and bustle, but there is tactical elements of it that they struggle with, and it seems that's some of those Sligo Rovers players are struggling with that tactical element, because they come into they, as I said, like they went up to Pats on Friday, heavily defeated 4-1. They went in front in that game, weren't able to hold on to the lead for very long, and Pat steamrolled them then throughout the course of the next 75-80 minutes. And that's what happens with Sligo. If they concede, they're very vulnerable, and they find it very difficult to react from those situations. So unless something changes drastically, and also in terms of the transfer window coming up now in June, it'll be a huge time for John Russell to try and bring in reinforcements, because he did a very good job in that department last season. Let's see if he can do it again. Yeah,
so he has a track record for sort of turning things around. Yeah. And the contrast, I suppose, with Sligo, obviously, Graham, is Galway United. We've spoken about the 3-2 win over Drogheda United, to add to what has been a really, really good weekend for them. Just on the Drogheda point of view first, though, Graham, obviously after, they're level on points with Derry on 10 points, but it was looking really, really rosy there yesterday. Two well delivered corners, and then I imagine Kevin Doherty will be, pulling his hair out with what happened afterwards, particularly off the back of what has been a difficult run for them, including some of the issues off the pitch as well.
Yeah, it hasn't all been, considering how at this stage last year, I think they were probably on 20 points in around that last year, and they were the surprise package. That was the first year down full time. Everything was fine. They were off the back of the FAI Cup win. They were due to go into Europe. All them things were at this stage last season were all looking good for Drogheda. And I think that, judging off the fact that how well they done last year, but it is tough. It is tough for them. And again, a lot of noise around the club that is distracting them probably away from the football. And I know Kevin would be frustrated with that. They've conceded 14 goals, which is a lot for them, and I think they'd be disappointed with that. Obviously, we've lost a couple of strikers. Thomas going on loan back to Derry, and obviously Fran Pero has moved on as well. Douglas James Taylor's moved on, so they are losing a lot of goals in their team. Doyle's come back in and scored the other night. Helped one of the goals the other night. Scored a couple of that, but he probably should have scored again to make it 3-1. I think they were 2-1 up. Loboto just equalised, and Doyle went down the other end and should have scored. The keeper actually made a really good save, but he should have scored, and that might have took the game away. And then Galway come back into it, and it's Twardek's having his best return ever in goals. Like, he played for Bowes twice in Sligo. I think he only scored 1 or 2 goals in each season in his whole career at them clubs. He scored 5 now for Galway, and he's just been named their player of the month down there as well. So he's having an unbelievable season, but he is an outlet for John Caulfield. They use him a lot. They kick onto that side if they need him. In fairness, he did change it. He started with Loboto and Franz Pero up front, and then in the second half, he brought on Walsh and stuff, and Walsh made a difference as well. So, look, it's difficult for Drogheda because the barometer for them is probably in around where they are, considering what they're competing against and the budgets they're competing against. But the expectation of how well they done last season, how well they done the season before to win the FAI Cup is still there. But I still think they'll be okay. I still think they'll, I don't think they get dragged into that relegation. I think that at the moment that looks like it's going to be between Sligo and Waterford between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, and obviously Galway have made a really brilliant start, and it is very easy, Conan, to be very reactive to results. Obviously great back-to-back results over the Easter weekend, but in fairness to John Caulfield, and this was something maybe there was a question mark at the start of the season given the number of players that went out and the huge amount of turnover, but when you sift through the pieces now, that's a really well-balanced squad there, and particularly then when you add Piero into it as well.
Yeah, so I've talked about Piero before in terms of the goals that he brings at every club he's been, but especially at the League of Ireland level. Scored a lot of goals at Athlone, a lot of goals at Drogheda, and he started really well at Galway. Still unfit, not match sharp, but will do really well. Aaron Bulger's another brilliant signing. But I think with Twardek, as Graham mentioned, the best return that he has ever got before this season has been 4 goals. And as an attacking player, you're surprised at that, considering the way he plays and how direct he is. Head down, driving runs down the wing. But he comes on the 60th minute last night, scores within a couple of minutes and assists the winner. They're the type of impact substitutions that John Caulfield will absolutely love. And Stephen Walsh came on at half-time, set up one of the goals as well. So impact substitutions are key. And with the players that he has Stephen Walsh that'll score goals. He has obviously Pirro will score goals, and Tuareg will score goals. Dave Hurley will chip in, but like we saw the other night, free kicks, penalties. He actually missed his first one on the opening day of the season in Eamon DC Park, but he scored one since. And look, Galway are a good side. They do need to tighten up at the back. That's no question about that. But their attacking options are very good, and they will score goals.
Yeah, better than last season in certain sense, because obviously the analysis, I think, and I remember somebody, emailing in and giving out that our analysis of it was always like Moses Dyer, set pieces, blah, 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 etc. John Caulfield, set pieces, blah, blah, blah. Now, I think we said other words within blah, blah, blah as well. But are they sort of better now than what they had, particularly post-Moses?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, because they were relying on Moses. With this team, there's goals from everywhere. I didn't even mention Jimmy Cohan. So there's players that will score goals in all those attacking areas of the pitch, and even in midfield. Last year there was a over-reliance, especially in that first half of the season, obviously when Moses Dyer was there. Now that he's gone, there has to be they had to fill the void, and they've done that with numerous players, not just one. So definitely in a better position this year than last year.
Yeah, and just from the draw of the game as well, and people would have probably seen the statement afterwards, but this is from the match against Bows. So there was a collision between Shane Farrell and Senan Mullen towards the end of the game, just as the clock ticked from 77 to 78 minutes, and it was the back of Farrell's head and the front of Mullen's. Very quick reaction from the referee, Paul Norton, to signal the medics to run on as Farrell slowly went down to his knees and then sort of rolled over onto his back in the 86th minute. Ambulance took him away, but fortunately the statement on Saturday from Drogheda confirmed that Shane Farrell was released from hospital and will continue to be monitored by their medical staff. And they added our thanks to our medical team, Bowes' medical team as well, and St. John's ambulance for their response and care last night. Obviously a very kind of scary moment. But just moving on to Dundalk, his win over St. Pat's. Obviously St. Pat's, this was an opportunity for them to lay down a marker. But on Dundalk first, Graham, this has been a great start to the season for them in their first season back under Kieran Kilduff. But one of the things that's very noticeable about the goals that they are scoring, it's a lot of second balls. It's almost a Drogheda United feel to the way that they are finding out. Even in the Louth derby, if I remember, probably a lot of focus on the fact it was a Danny Mullen flicked goal, so there's a lot of focus on that, but also then obviously the the flares and everything else, and it took away from it. But when you actually take a step back, they have a lot of, they always seem to be first to a second ball falling.
Yeah, I watched some of their games on the highlights and stuff, and I managed to watch the Louth derby. They play with high energy, which is big for them. You're actually the joint top goal scorers in the division with Pats on 18 goals, which is brilliant for them to come straight back up. And then you're thinking, do they have enough goals to keep them in the division? Yeah, they do. They've been excellent. I couldn't speak more highly of the job Kieran Kilduff has done, because I know there was even talk in the summer and a bit of over the off season, a bit of discontent as well around a few things, and he signed his contract, but he just carries himself so well. Really nice fella, but obviously the way he got his team playing has been unbelievable. And Daryl Hogan has been excellent. I know he got sent off the other night, but he has a zip back in his step. Who up front, the striker looks a real handful, gets himself in. His goals against Shells, where he outmuscles one of them. He gets a header the other night, brilliant position right in front of the goalkeeper, against Shells as well. And they've been excellent. They really have, and they fully deserve to be where they're at. And that's the bit that hold my hands up. I didn't expect the Dundalk to come up and do this well. I thought they'd struggle and there'd be a bit more hardship for them. But they've been unbelievable, and a breath of fresh air in terms of how they're trying to play and what they're bringing and the energy they're bringing. And like you said, full credit toward goes to Kieran. They've only lost one game, which is an unbelievable achievement considering how the teams that generally come up really, really struggle. He's brought them up and they've been flying, because at this stage last year Cork were probably sitting in ninth, but you could see they were starting to struggle with the injuries that they got. But full credit to them, they were excellent. And look, Pats will be disappointed because Pats have been on such a good run and on the high of beating Sligo. You thought they would have just went into town and thought, right, here's a game where we'll have a shootout in old fashioned. Whoever scores the most goals will win this one, like in terms of maybe a 4-3 or something. But they just weren't clinical enough in their chances, and Dundalk were.
Yeah, and Bemi Arubi, who Graham was referring to there, obviously leading the line very well. Obviously, when they played Bows and got that draw, it was down as a Tarasca own goal, the goal that Dundalk got, and but again, you know, he's putting himself into those kind of interesting positions, and even like laying on one of the goals there yesterday as well.
You see, the thing is, he kind of reminds me of a little bit about Christy Fagan and the way he plays and the way that he holds the ball up, and then he has two wide players in Horgan and Kenny that can come in and play off him. You have obviously Shane Tracy the other night that got his goal, but you can have Bobby Burns, Harry Groom, those type of players that can play off him as well. So he's the exact player that Kieran Kilduff is wanting in that position, and he has him. Now, you would have maybe said over the years that the goals wouldn't have been a big thing. He didn't score at Shells, he didn't score at Waterford. I think he went 20 games without scoring. But since then, he scored 15 goals for Dundalk over the last, obviously some in the first division, but then into this season as well. So the confidence he will get from that as a 21-year-old, confidence he's getting from his manager picking him, and like Graham said, the job that he has done Kieran Kilduff has done has been remarkable. And I remember mentioning to somebody probably about 5 or 6 years ago, they asked me the question of any player that I played with, who do you think would become a very good manager? And my answer was Kieran Kilduff, because he sees the game differently. He always saw the game differently to anybody else, especially like if we were in training or post games or whatever, analysing games. He'd always say something that would be like, gee, that's really interesting. And I think another important aspect to it is that he brought Ken Kiernan in. And Ken Kiernan would probably be known as more of a women's football coach, but they joined up at Athlone, and the two of them worked really well there. And
did really well in the end, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great job. And then the two of them went, well, obviously Kieran got the job and brought Ken with him. So the two of them have worked wonders at Dundalk. And hopefully it still goes, they continue to do that, because they're playing with a free-flowing football and they're doing exceptionally well, so fair play to them. Yeah,
and it wasn't many happy returns for Stephen Kenny back to a place I'm sure he loves up in Dundalk. It was an opportunity for them to lay a marker, I suppose, with the season that they've had to date, but obviously a little bit of a setback, and more just a sign that they are still a work in progress, even though things are looking really good still.
Yeah, a couple of setbacks in terms of the result, but also with the injuries that they've received from those games in Ramal Palmer and Aidan Keane. Don't know how serious they are. I think they were muscle injuries, but if they're muscle injuries, that's a couple of weeks. But the two early goals killed them. Like really poor defending. Ball watching. I think Darren Nugent ball watched for the first goal, and then Sean Hoare mistake at the second one where he's passing it back inside. And like Graham said, Dundalk just break really quickly and end up scoring a second. And they did miss a lot of chances as well. Max Mata had a wonderful opportunity in the first couple of minutes, and Jason McClean had a great chance. But look, Dundalk should have been down to 10 men in the first half. I think Dervin's tackle was really poor on Keane Levy. It's not the first time this season he did it on Will Fitzgerald and got sent off. Could be a liability in that team, in that midfield, if he continues to tackle like that, because it was an unacceptable challenge considering how far Levy had knocked the ball in front of him. But if Dundalk have the players in that midfield, that if somebody does do that, they've somebody to come in, like they've Keith Buckley, as I said, Bobby Burns, Harry Groom, really good players in that central midfield position. Yeah,
in the end, of course, Darrell Horgan did get sent off because the referee was looking at his watch. Although I don't think Horgan agrees. Just on Ramal Palmer, obviously he came on, I think, around 17 minutes yesterday, but then had to go off at half time. You mentioned injury, but the game before, obviously, he was a massive influence. Not just the goal that he got for the equaliser, but then laid on a couple of goals and just seen these little getting into great positions and like nice simple touches as well.
He's a superb footballer, Raf. And the thing,
and a big miss last season, of course. Yeah,
he only played 4 games last season, and he was a huge miss for Pats last year, and not many people had mentioned the fact that Pat struggled last year, and I would have said it was because a player like Ramal wasn't in that central midfield position, because he's exceptional, especially when he's fit, when he's on his game. And this is just going to be a setback again for Pats, because they don't have a player of his calibre in that central midfield area to create chances, to drive, because he has everything as a footballer. He's a complete midfield player. And I think the experience that he got in Turkey, obviously played a lot of games at Barnsley in League One as well, and he's a class above when he's on his game. But the only problem with that is that the injuries are hampering him a little bit. But Stephen will be hoping to get him back very quickly and keep him clean.
Yeah, and the final. Sorry, go on.
His assist for Breslin's goal is brilliant. It really is. Like, if anyone hasn't seen it, rolls his foot over the ball, or rolls his right foot over the ball, and then reverses the pass through the defender's legs, and Breslin has an underlap and goes around the keeper. Like, his assist is fantastic.
Yeah.
Watching the scores come through, it was a joy.
Yeah, and the final game we're going to talk about just briefly, Bohemians 1, Waterford 1, and Colin Whelan's penalty to equalise after John Mahon had opened the score. And Graham, just on Waterford, obviously Kevin Long has come in. He played 64 minutes on Friday night, but the one thing beyond him as well, they seem to have shored up a little bit defensively, at least from open play when you look at the results, because it was 2 penalties basically they conceded over the span of that weekend. Now they still are waiting for a first win of the season, and still no clean sheet, but that's at least a slight positive there for John Daly.
Yeah, like, they've conceded the most goals in the division at 21, so you had to shore it up. I think it looks like they've gone 5 at the back now as well. So yeah, he brought in Long, which will give them that experience. Mahon scored the header against Bowes. Another game that was decided by set pieces, really. Like, Matton's header at the back post gives Waterford the lead. Again, Bowes get back into the game, and I like Bowes. I think they play really good football, and they probably don't get the goals on top of the build-up play at times. Whelan takes the penalty really well. Dawson Avoid gets taken down. Whelan steps up, really clinical with the penalty. And like I said, if they're a little bit more clinical, go on and win the game, I think they probably, on the second half as well, the chances that they create in the second half, it looks like they probably deserve to win the game. But Waterford have shown a little bit of steel. I thought the penalty was a little bit harsh on them on Friday night against Rovers. I have to say, if you're telling defenders you don't need to put your arms behind your back when you're in the box, go out and defend properly and get yourself into an athletic stance. But you probably need to put your hands behind your back now, because any type of ball contact with the hand, I think he was in a natural position, and like I said, I think they were a little bit unlucky to concede that penalty. The other night against Bowes, it was a penalty. But yeah, that you can see Daly's trying to just make them a little bit more robust and stronger, and like stay in the game a little bit more, and hopefully then try and nick goals, because there's always goals in Paul Jam. Like, so my thing is, if they can be defensively solid, generally they have enough firepower with Noon and Lonergan and Almond that would nick them a goal. As long as they can stay in the game a little bit more and be a bit more attritional, and they probably have been. But Bowes will be disappointed that they haven't beaten the team at the bottom of the league at home. So for Bowes to challenge, and again, I'm not talking about winning the league, I'm talking about building to challenge here. Like, so if they can challenge this year, they might go closer again next year, and you're constantly building towards a league title. For Bowes to challenge in that sense, they probably should be winning them games at home, especially against a team bottom of the league.
Yeah, because it was costly enough last season, those type of games. And just in the first division, just in terms of where the table lies at the moment, obviously Cork City well ahead at this stage, 23 points, and then Bray Wanderers are closest on 15, UCD 14, and then Wexford and Athlone on 13, and Cove coming up on 12. And also the first round draw for the Sports Direct FAI Cup has been made, and you can find the fixtures on rte.ie/sport. Games will be played on the week ending 17th of May. As confirmed last year, we will broadcast every round of the 2026 Cup campaign from the second round onwards, obviously after this round that is about to be played. But we're just going to finish off in the Champions League before we chat to Rachel Graham. And our live game on Wednesday is PSG against Liverpool, which is live on RT2 and the RTÉ Player. And obviously, Conan, last year they met, and PSG battered Liverpool, but they came away in the away leg on that occasion with a 1-0 win. Obviously, they ultimately went out on penalties, which we will know about now, given what happened in Prague. But it just feels like Liverpool are, despite spending however number of hundreds of millions, are actually a worse team now than what they were then. Yeah,
they're really struggling. And the weekend's game against Manchester City proved that as well. They just couldn't cope with Manchester City's movement, aggression nearly, which would really worry Liverpool fans. And even we were talking about the connection between the fans of in the Irish national team and the fans of Ireland. And if you switch that then to Liverpool at the moment, and we saw Szoboszlai's body actions towards the Liverpool fans after the Man City defeat, He wasn't great at all. And you're coming in, like, and you're speaking to people involved in football, and you're just only seeing one outcome now come Wednesday, because PSG are just on such a run of form themselves, scoring so many goals. I think 15 goals in their last 4 games, and with, at the moment, with Liverpool's leaky defence and talk about Van Dijk and Konate, and you can just see that, like, PSG's attackers just rubbing their hands with glee going up against them, because they're not getting support from their midfield, and especially in fullback areas they're really struggling as well. So yeah, we could talk about this and say, yeah, PSG probably will have dominate possession, win 3 or 4-0, but then you never know with Liverpool. They could turn up and put in one of those amazing European nights that they do, and over the 2 legs and get through. But I can't see that happening, Raf. Yeah,
Graham, your own thoughts on that as well. I mean, Liverpool's structure seems to have fallen apart a little bit. That seems to be a big issue, even beyond, all the talk is on Salah and his future and the fact he's leaving, but that's a bit of a side issue. It seems the cohesion that was there last season, up until towards the end, I think they did seem to fall away a little bit once the league title won, but that seems to have carried over into this season largely, although in Europe sometimes they can get away with it. Maybe not this week though.
Maybe not. No, I think somebody said they still might have a chance to win the Champions League. I don't see that happening at all. I don't think they've enough firepower compared to the other teams, and I think defensively they're not as strong the way Arsenal can be and see out games. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it was around this time last year when we played Paris Saint-Germain and they lost, and then they were overrun in the Carling Cup final by Newcastle. I thought Newcastle overpowered them on the day as well. And that was the worry, is that they look like they can be overpowered, where previously that wasn't the case with Liverpool. They could outrun you. I don't see them doing that anymore. I don't see them outrunning teams. You're not going to outrun teams when generally you have possession, and a lot of teams would give Liverpool possession at times. But in a game against City where you have to run, you have to be competitive, and you have to go toe-to-toe with them at times, I didn't think they'd done that. Defensively, they look struggling. The lines aren't together. The distances aren't there between the back line. They don't track runners well enough. The midfielders don't probably, to me, I think sometimes the midfielders take too many touches and don't move the ball quick enough. And it's a little bit late getting to the strikers and into their sort of players at the top end of the pitch. So I just think Paris Saint-Germain, after what happened last year, if they get a positive result at home, I don't even see the Anfield factor kicking in anymore when they're down to Anfield and think, right, because last year, Liverpool, only for Alisson, Liverpool stayed in the leg last year against Paris Saint-Germain away. It was one of the best goalkeeper performances I've seen in a long time. I thought he was excellent. And then you thought, right, Liverpool have got away with this. I think Harvey Elliott scored late on. You thought Liverpool have got away with this. Now the Anfield factor might kick in. But when I went to extra time at Anfield, there was only one winner. Like Paris Saint-Germain looked really controlled, looked like they were a bit more edge than them at the top end of the pitch. And I thought, well, I actually was disappointed, because I thought Liverpool would kick on here in extra time, playing into the cop and all that stuff. But they just didn't have any energy about them. And that was the worry. And that's manifested now over a full season, that they just don't look like they have enough power, don't look like they're willing to run. All them simple things, but it goes back to the distances are off, the tempo midfield is off, and they're not scoring enough goals for the chances that they're creating. They're creating a vast number of chances, but their conversion rate's really low. And I just think with Dembele, Ramos, who could come on, Doe, Kajalasvili, if I said that right, and Mboye.
Close enough.
Paris Saint-Germain. I got a few names wrong today. I just think they have too much firepower for them, and there's too much guile in midfield with the team and stuff like that. So, yeah, I don't see Liverpool coming through this leg at all.
Yeah,
Alisson's out as well.
Yeah,
so that's a big one.
Yeah, and obviously PSG, the fact that they've actually got over the line in Europe, that takes away some of the doubts that have always been sort of there about them, which probably makes a difference. But before we speak to Rachel Graham as well, I suppose just we've one Irish team, senior team, that's not going to be in a World Cup. Obviously the 17s as well, congratulations to them. They're going to back-to-back World Cups, but the women's team still have an opportunity and definitely guaranteed to play off whatever happens. But Carla Ward was talking about packing out the Aviva on Saturday week. That's hugely, hugely important as well, because the next couple of games, in terms of having an easier playoff, it's massive.
Yeah, it's a great time. The last couple of years have been a great time supporting women's football and women's international football, and obviously the Irish international team. and they've done remarkably well to put themselves in a position. This doubleheader against Poland is huge, very critical of getting into a good position to qualify. So yeah, it's all important. It's very, very important that we all support the girls in green in the Aviva on Saturday week and pack it out as much as we can. We'll have like what I love to see in Tallaght. Like, I'd be a firm believer that the game should be in Tallaght, Raf, if I'm being completely honest, because that can be packed out and all the young girls and boys that are just surrounding the pitch before, during, and after the game. It raises the atmosphere, raises the levels, gets the confidence going amongst the players. But the fact that it's in the girls themselves want to play in the Aviva, and absolutely should be, because that it is the international stadium. But it's important now that we do our job as fans and attend this game and pack it out and give the girls the greatest support that we can, because a World Cup is on the horizon for them and they have a wonderful opportunity of getting there.
Yeah, and I've seen what the sport levels are like firsthand in Prague. Obviously, it was on match day, particularly just in the Old Town Square, like when the fans get behind the team, it didn't make a difference on this occasion, but you know what I mean anyway. But anyway, I'm going to be chatting to Rachel Graham very, very shortly. So Conan, thanks very much for coming on, and Graham, thanks for your time as well.
Pleasure, lads. Thanks.
All right, you're very welcome back to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Next week, the Republic of Ireland women's team will continue their World Cup qualifying campaign against Poland, a doubleheader. Gdansk first on the 14th, and then on the Saturday, the 18th, then it is here in Aviva Stadium. And we will be looking ahead to that next week with Rachel Graham. But Rachel is here now just to talk about the squad and also the Women's Premier Division. Obviously, we didn't have an episode last Monday, but also there was the All-Ireland Cup as well. But let's first talk about the squad, Rachel. And it was named last Monday. I was up at the squad announcement with Carla Ward, but since then there seems to be a lot of change. And in fairness, Carla had flagged that there were a couple of injury worries as well when she had named the initial squad. Yeah, and I think probably the hardest one to take is Lily Agg. She's obviously ruptured her Achilles now, and for someone, she's only back from an ACL injury, and then to come back and she gets her first call up again, buzzing, she scores a goal in the game, and then it's a few minutes later she ruptures her Achilles, and that's another long-term injury. That's a nasty enough injury. So for her, my heart really goes out to her to having to go through that. And if you talk to any player who has gone through an ACL, they say it's one of the toughest things you'll ever go through. So to just come through it and now to get another long-term injury, it's obviously really tough for her. And, she's probably doesn't have age on her side either. She's 32 now, potentially 33 when she comes back from this injury, and probably very hard to get a professional contract at 33 with them two bad injuries behind you. So look, hopefully that's not the case, but I'm sure for her it's a real down the dumps kind of time for her. But really, my heart did go out to her. And look, Jessie Stapleton has to get a scan. She came off early in a game with a calf injury, so potentially she's not going to make it either. And I seen Ava Brennan is not on the squad for Bows at the weekend, and I heard rumours of her, having done an MCL injury. I don't know how bad it is. It could be one of them where it's just a couple of weeks. But they can be nasty enough as well where it's a couple of months. But I don't know the extent of it, but look, potentially she's not going to make the squad either after getting, her first call up, which is really tough for her. But look, I don't think it's a case where she'll never be in again. I think it's just really bad time, really unfortunate for her. So look, I don't know if that one's right or not, if she's not in the squad, but I did hear potentially that she could be missing. Yeah, we'll talk about Ava Brennan in a little bit more detail very shortly, because Carla Ward seems to be a really big fan of hers as well. And again, it's a representative from the league, which is kind of a rare thing. But just on Lily Agg, she did post on Instagram on, I think it was Friday night, early hours of Saturday, and she said, after the hardest 15 months of my life recovering from an ACL injury, I'm now having to come to terms with an Achilles rupture. I had finally made it back. I worked so hard to get there and faced more adversity than most will ever know. An ACL is unlucky enough to fight your way back from that, and then rupture your Achilles on the other leg makes you question everything. Two of the worst injuries you can have, and I keep asking myself what I ever did to deserve this. Why me? Why now? People close to me keep saying I'll come back stronger again. If I'm being honest right now, I genuinely don't know if I will come back at all. I'll be another year older. I'm 32 now, out of contract in June with an ACL and an Achilles rupture behind me in the last 2 years. I'm not naive. The game is changing, and I know It'll be a risk many won't want to take a chance on. My heart is broken and my head hurts. To everyone who's believed in me, supported me and valued me as a player and person, thank you. It has meant more than you will ever know. And you kind of alluded to it. It is a tough thing. Obviously, a lot of our Ireland teammates sort of came out very quickly and were, there was a lot of moral support out there on social media. But as a it's harder, I suppose, from an international level to sort of rally around because you're not around the person as much. But even at club level, how do you sort of rally around somebody who's in that sort of situation?
Yeah, and look, that's probably the hard part about it is, you know, when you're in a team sport, you're so used to doing everything with your team, and like you train with all your teammates, you win, you lose with them, you're out on the pitch, and then when you do get a bad injury, it's right, you're in the gym on your own for probably like nearly 9 months to 12 months with that one. So like that's the really hard part of it, because they are isolated when they are doing the recovery, and you know, you just have to kind of keep checking in on them, making sure they're okay, you know. And when they do get a little milestone, like, you know, Kate Mooney's coming back for us from an ACL injury, and like the day she was back running, like a few of the girls brought up, like, you know, presents for her, like, you know, a little balloon in the dressing room that she was back running. So you have to like never forget about them. And even like last week, she got to change direction, which is something that, you know, it's basic for every footballer, but for her it was a huge milestone. So just making big moments out of these little moments for us, but it's a big moment for her. So look, it's really hard. It's so isolating. It's something you're not used to as playing in a team sport, being out on your own in the gym on your own all the time. It's very lonely. And look, for her, she's gone through probably 12 months of it, and now probably has another 12 months ahead of her. It is hard to wrap her head around it, and she's right. You know, what has she done to deserve it? It's really unfortunate. It's really unlucky. So it's going to be another tough time for her. And look, she's out of contract as well, so I don't know how that one's going to play out for her. Yeah,
Jessu, who we spoke to, I think it was this time last year as well, would probably be somebody who'd be able to, I suppose, lend an ear in a certain sense, because she's been through sort of long-term injuries, back in the squad as well.
Yeah, and look, for me, she's one of the players that like I just love watching her play. Obviously played with her at Shelbourne, and like she was someone like just always had a smile on her face, just loved football, loved playing, loved training. And then obviously it was brilliant to see her go away, play professional, you know, living her dream. And like she's a special player. She's really just lovely to watch, the way she moves with the ball, you know, how talented she is. And look, the worry is when someone does do 2 ACL injuries, you worry, are they going to be the same player when they come back? And look, she hasn't had a lot of minutes at West Ham as well, so I don't know what stage she's going to come into the squad, how sharp she's going to be. But look, she came back from the first one, you know, that's the same player. Hopefully she does the second one the same. But look, for me, she's one of our most talented players. We need her playing for Ireland, and when she has played for Ireland, she's made a huge difference. So look, she's a huge talent. You would just worry, you know, someone coming back, do they lose a bit of pace, or, you know, do they have a bit of fear? You find sometimes when players have these injuries, when they come back, and like if they feel any sort of niggle, they think the worst, and like they don't want to play, they don't want to train, which look, it's fair enough. But look, hopefully she's still quite young. Hopefully she just comes back the player she was, because for me, she's like a really special, talented player that we, you know, can't afford not to have in our team.
Yeah, and it's an option, I suppose, for that midfield area as well. And it was interesting, Carla, during the press conference last week, was sort of very focused in on, like, when she was explaining why she didn't call up Tara O'Hanlon, it was more about midfield depth, and maybe that does play into what is to come next week.
Yeah, potentially. And look, Jess is someone who can play, like if we are playing wing back, she can play in a wing back role as well. I think she'd be ideal for that. She can play central midfield as well. She can play in the 10. I've seen her play there before, but look, she is probably naturally a winger, so I would imagine if she is going to play, you'd see her in that right wing position. But we spoke about it before, it's probably an area where we are a little bit weaker, and Aoife Mannion does, you know, the best she can do, but just not naturally that kind of wing and attacking player. So potentially, you know, these are the games that we need to go and get, I would say, 4 points from, so we need to get a win at least. So, you know, we need to be on the front foot, we need to go and attack them. So maybe we might see Jessie in that position now for one of the games anyway.
Yeah, and let's listen to Carla Ward just on Ava Brennan, because again, as I mentioned, she's been called up from the League of Ireland, which is kind of a rarer thing, but clearly Carla Ward is a massive fan of hers. So let's just have a listen to what she had to say in the press conference last week.
She plays in a way, and it was funny because I said to a couple of staff when we watched her last week at Bowes, and I said, just watch the basics, and she finds little pockets of space. She makes the basic decisions very, very well. And you know, usually if you know someone's coming to watch, you try to do a little bit more. That's not her style, and you could see that. I think she gave the ball away once in the first half, and yeah, she plays in a way that I like. Very different to what we've got. And listen, we're under no illusions. She's very young. She's learning. You know, she's got great potential. So this is around having a look at her in a different environment.
All right, so that's Carla Ward on Ava Brennan at the press conference squad announcement last week. And what was teeing up the question was actually Emma Duffy from the 42 mentioned that Carla had previously described Ava as sort of like an Ella Toone type of player in terms of style. Does that kind of tally with how you've seen her?
For me, probably no. Like, I think Ella Toone's more like a really attacking player, whereas Ava plays in the 6. Look, she has both sides of her game. Ava Brennan, she can attack. She's really creative, clever on the ball, and even Carla said there, does the simple things well. And like people often forget, like it's not easy to do the simple things well. Sometimes that's part of a game that it's probably 90% of her game, and she has to be able to do it well. So for me, she's really mature in that sense, where she doesn't try anything weird or wonderful. It's the basics, just get them right. And then she does have a bit of a flair where she can create a goal, she can score goals. But for me as well, she also has the other side of the game where she's really hungry to win the ball back, has a a real bit of aggression in her, which sometimes you don't see in a lot of young players. But for her, for me, she's been one of the standout players definitely for Bows in the last couple of years, but also in the league. I think for her age, how mature she is, she really leads that Bows team in the playing in the midfield at that young age. You do get a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, and she doesn't seem fazed at all by it. So look, she's someone with huge potential. Obviously now it's I don't know if she's going to be in the squad or out the squad, but I mean, for her to get a call up, it's so exciting, so brilliant. And look, I think Carla's definitely right in pinpointing her as someone who's there for the future, and I do think she's right as well in terms of probably has to still grow and develop a lot, and getting her in and around the squad now would be brilliant, even just to see the standard of her, but also to see how the likes of Kate McCabe or Denise O'Sullivan, how they conduct themselves, how they carry themselves, because look, I do think she's going to go professional now, so it's just about getting that next step up. She's still quite, I'd say she's still quite small, petite kind of player, so for her to kind of build herself up. And look at Denise, is probably a similar build. How does she, what does she do in the gym? What does she do to prep for a game? So I think getting her in and seeing all that side of the stuff as well is going to be really important for her, but definitely she's someone with a huge future ahead of her. Yeah,
and obviously a beneficiary of that under-19s game last year against the development team as well, which was February of last year. But Carla Ward, now she didn't call up these players, but she did talk about some other LOI talents as well, some names that won't surprise you. Let's just have a listen to that.
Look, there's a few in the League of Ireland that I really like, the youngsters. Madison McGrain I've talking about a lot as well, and Kaminsky, little left back at Shamrock Rovers, I like her. She's a good player. I know what you're laughing at there. He's told me off for saying Shamrock without the Rovers.
There you go.
I'm learning.
Good notes.
But no, there's a lot of young players that I really like. Yeah, I think it's exciting, but the gap is still. We have to be really clear, and the gap between 19s and first team is massive.
All right, so that's Carla Ward there, and obviously she's been in the job long enough to add Rovers to the end of Shamrock. But on a more serious note, a lot of the names that she mentioned there, you've actually spoken about here as well.
Yeah, and look, that's not me having like a magic eye and noticing these players. Like if you watch them, you'll pick them out straight away as well. And again, Madison McGuan is the one that keeps coming up, and she's even younger again than Ava, but she'll be in our 19 squad now, they're away in the same window as the seniors, so they're away to Germany. I think they're playing France and Slovakia, I think, in their group. So look, 3 tough games for her, but again, she's someone like just so much potential. If you go watch her play, it's she's a mix. I said it before, but kind of a Katie McCabe. Denise O'Sullivan plays centre mid, lovely left foot, really skillful. Again, like really mature for her age. She is probably one of the main players in Treaty at this age, and she's only 17, and takes their penalties, takes a lot of responsibility on her, doesn't shy away from anything, which is rare in a young player. So for her, her ceiling is just so big. It's exciting to see how far she's going to go, and just look, thankfully we get to keep her in an Ireland jersey. I think she's going to be huge, and I think I don't think it's going to be too long before we see her getting a senior call-up. Yeah, a couple of goals at the weekend as well, I think, in the All-Ireland Cup. But also you mentioned Katie McCabe, and we will have Arsenal's semi-final in the Champions League, their first leg against Lyon, which will be live on RTÉ at the end of the month. But in fairness, Katie in Champions League action has been in the news as well, I think it's fair to say. Yeah, look, it wouldn't be Kate, kind of controversy does kind of follow her, but obviously, she pulled Alyssa Thompson's hair, but look, I don't think she's meant. I think she's meant to give a clever free away, pull the jersey back they were breaking, which I do think is what you meant to do. But I do think she's very lucky in a way as well. I think it is a red card. You can't pull someone's hair whether you meant it or not. I'm just shocked that VAR didn't take a look at it. I think very, very lucky. Even
I think Sonia Bonpastor was also equally shocked that VAR didn't look at that.
But even for the ref not even to give a free kick was a bit strange. Even if it was a pull of the jersey, it's a blatant free. But look, I don't know if, they're a bit sentimental about Katie. They obviously know her time at Arsenal is most likely coming to an end, and like I do think that's considered violent conduct, which is potentially a 3-game ban, and that's the 2 semi-finals and the final she would have missed. So, whether they were just being extra nice to her because it wasn't intentional, but I do think she's very lucky to have gotten away with that one.
Yeah, and now she did quickly go on to Instagram shortly after the game to say, I just want to clarify that I was genuinely reaching for the shirt. I wouldn't ever want to pull someone's hair. Full respect to Thompson. Now, just switching focus to domestic matters and the Avenir Sports All-Ireland Cup. There was one game yesterday, which was Shamrock Rovers winning 2-1 at Linfield, and then in Group A on Saturday, Sligo Rovers were 2-0 winners over the holders Wexford. Earlier in Group B, then also DLR Waves beat Lisburn 1-0. Galway United continue their good start to the season, 4-0 winners over Peamount. Treaty United, as I mentioned, Madison McGuane scored a couple of goals in that one as well, and that's a 3-2 win over Cliftonville. And Athlone, managerless for the moment, and we'll talk about that, 2-0 win over Cork City. And then Bohemians lost 3-1 at home to Glentoran, and Shells, your side, I suppose, won 4-2 at Waterford. We'll talk about your moment in it as well. But overall, I suppose the takeaway from that is, bar Glentoran's win over Bows, it was very much the Women's Premier Division winning over the Northern Irish clubs.
Yeah, and look, we've, a certain team has won it the last 3 years as well. It's probably shown a bit of a gap between, but I think the Northern League, there's probably a top 2 or 3 teams, and then the rest are probably a little bit weaker. So look, I do think we probably have a stronger league, but look, it's a great competition for us. We're obviously so used to playing each other so many times over the last few years to get new faces, and even for teams, we used it as a chance to kind of make a couple of changes and play players who maybe haven't played, and give players their debut. So it's great for that. But yeah, look, I don't think there was any probably real shock results coming from last weekend.
Yeah, the last time I remember somebody scoring from a corner, straight from a corner, was Katie McCabe in the World Cup. Do you know anyone else who's done that very recently?
Well, look, in fairness to Katie, I think there was no wind at that night, whereas I think Storm Dave deserves probably an assist for mine. But it was funny actually, because I came in after the warm-up and Sean said to me, like, I'm going to put you on corners in swinging. And in my head, I'm thinking, I haven't hit a corner in about 5 years, like not even practice it in training, nothing. So I was kind of thinking, geez, you could have gave me a heads up. I would have practiced 1 or 2 before coming in, but look, it worked out well in the end. But look, I do think Storm Dave probably deserves a lot of credit for mine.
Yeah, for your one, were you just kind of trying to hit a certain area, and then obviously you're claiming the wind has taken it in then?
Yeah, and look, if you watch it back, you can see the corner flag is pretty much horizontal to the ground. That's how strong the wind was on the day. And I just said, I've just hit it a bit wider than you have been hitting it previously, and the wind is going to take it. So I seen it go into the net, but I didn't think it went straight in until everyone started kind of running towards me. So
I was thinking from your celebration, it was a little bit muted for the type of goal that it was.
Yeah, I could see it went in, but I couldn't make out if whether it went straight in or someone got a touch on it. But I copped on straight away then when they started running towards me. But look, I don't get many goals, so I'll take whatever I can, I suppose.
Yeah, you're playing down your goal. Maeve Walmers, though, was very well taken for the equaliser.
Yeah, and look, she's someone that we spoke about before, about having a lot of potential. She's a good young player. I think she's 18 now. She's still in school, and this year she's come back and she's been a completely different player to she was last year. Really matured, even physically, and she's really shone for us in our pre-season game. She actually couldn't play her first 2 games. She was supposed to be with the 19s international team, and when they got their medical, something came back on her ECG, which was fine in the end, but she couldn't play until it was cleared, so she missed her first couple of games of the season. But look, she's another huge potential, another lovely left foot player, left winger, can run. Our players can drive, and you see she cut inside and just beat a couple of players and put it in this corner of the net. So for her, yeah, like a really good young potential player. She's away with her 19s now next week, and yeah, I felt a bit guilty because she scored an absolute screamer of a goal, and everyone just kind of talked about my fluke. But look, she has plenty more to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, and Athlone Town, we did speak about the last time, from the last time we did this segment, and at the moment, a short-term coaching group of Anthony Fay, Dan Byrne and Brian Shelley remains in place at the club, with Chief Executive Stephen Gray and Shelley leading the recruitment process for a new head coach. Gray told RTÉ Sport they have been keeping the board, staff and players updated on a consistent basis as the recruitment process continues. Gray said a structured process is underway involving discussions across football, HR and finance with candidates identified both in Ireland and the UK. He said the women's team is a top priority for the club. We've spoken to 5 of the top people in women's football in Ireland, and we'll be speaking to 2 people based in the UK. We will be patient in the search for the best possible candidate, and hopefully at the end of the process we will secure the right person. And you can read James Callan's article on RT.ie just on that, which also includes quotes from Colin Fortune, the former head coach, who gave his view on the recent instability of the club when it comes to managerial tenures. But when you look at it in terms of, I suppose, what Colin Fortune said about the players being fine domestically, obviously, probably from your own point of view, you would have maybe perhaps liked to have played them now, where if there's a sort of big game where there might be, you know, a tactical curveball thrown, it'll be a little bit harder for them to deal with.
Yeah, potentially. But look, I don't think it's, you know, they haven't really shown that they're going to struggle. They've played well, they've performed well, they have, you know, really mature, experienced players in there who can solve problems on the pitch themselves. So sometimes it's not always just on a manager. Maybe players see more on the pitch than sometimes the manager might miss, and it's, you know, they solve it themselves. And I think they have players like that. So yeah, look, it's obviously not ideal. They want to get a manager in as soon as possible. They've played, I think, 3 or 4 games now without an official manager. So, you know, it can't go on too much longer. They obviously, you know, they're in talks with some people that I know of as well. So it should get sorted soon enough. But yeah, look, you know, everything's fine when you're winning. But if they get a bad result, then everything will maybe start to crumble, and, you know, they might start pointing fingers at the club. Why you've not got this sorted yet? So look, I think the sooner the better for them. But also, it's not something that they want to rush either. Yeah,
in terms of the names, obviously Stephanie Zambro, somebody we spoke about potentially being in line for it, but it appears like that's not going to go in her direction for other sort of off the field reasons. But Owen Weir and Laura Heffernan, I think, are also being spoken about.
Yeah, I've heard their names being mentioned. I think they met with the clubs. Yeah, like Owen for us, obviously, you know, spent 2 years with us. I'd speak highly of him as well. Obviously, just didn't work out for him at Shells. Then Laura Heffernan, you know, she's been around the league a long time. I think she's done a good job with DLR. Obviously, they're probably pretty limited with the players that they have and how they want to play. But I think she's someone that I think they could potentially be looking at. I think she met with the club. I don't know if she's considering it. I don't know if they offered it to her. But, you know, if you're looking at her for someone domestically, you know, she has a real good chance of winning. And they spoke about people abroad as well. And potentially someone could be Chelsea Noonan, who we would have seen previously involved with Irish under 17s international, and now she's over at Birmingham as a coach. The only thing is she doesn't have managerial experience, so that might be a bit of a barrier for her. But look, they definitely are going after someone kind of high profile. I think they are looking to go down the route of a female. I think that's their number one kind of. If they can get a female, they will. So you probably think Laura Heffernan's probably the most chance domestically to go in and take the job. But I've also heard Chelsea Noonan is probably another potential candidate as well.
Yeah, and I suppose for Steph Zambra, would have been just the timing isn't great at the moment, I suppose.
Yeah, she's obviously announced she's going to have a baby in September, so I'm sure you'd be busy enough with a newborn to be on taking a managerial job as well. Is probably too much. So look, she's done a great job at Rovers. Obviously was really disappointed not to get that job, and look, obviously, you know, great news for her and her husband now to have a baby. So look, I'm sure she's probably not too disappointed to haven't torn it down, given the reason why.
Yeah, but if she's sort of being spoken about now, obviously in the longer term, obviously she's going to be a name that'll be linked with jobs down the line as well, having done well at Shamrock Rovers as well. But for Athlone, next 2 assignments after the international window look fairly tricky. So Peamount at home, Wexford away. Although, like, when we didn't speak about it last week, obviously because we didn't have this segment last Monday. But Dana Sheriff scoring 4 goals means they don't have too many problems at one end of the pitch anyway.
And that's what I'm saying. If you have these players on the pitch, a lot of off the field stuff kind of gets swept under the rug. And obviously, we spoke about losing Kelly Brady, but for me, Dana Sheriff is a better player, and she's starting to prove that now. She's just scoring goals for fun. I mean, 4 goals in a game is you know, pretty huge. So look, I think when you have someone who can score goals like that, you'll always have a chance, you know, for them. But look at 5-2 in the game. But I think if you watch it back, it's not as easy as it probably seems by the score line. And, you know, it was 3-2 up until the 70th minute, which is, you know, obviously only a goal in it, and then they get the 4th and then they get the 5th late on. So if you're looking at it thinking it's, you know, an easy day for Athlone, a walk in the park, but I don't think the game was as easy as probably the scoreline makes it out.
Yeah, and a final point before we go, Galway United obviously winning in the All-Ireland Cup as well. This is a trophy they've won a couple of times, but in the league, obviously they're the only team that have won, like, got the 100% record. Real momentum behind them. It's just maybe a question of when they come back from the break now, how they sustain that.
Yeah, and that's like kind of the nature of our league, where there is a lot of stop-start, and sometimes it comes at a good time for you, but a lot of the times it can come at a bad time, and that's probably what Galway are thinking now. They've 4 wins from 4, 3 from 3 in the league, and, you know, really gaining momentum. The only team that haven't dropped points so far, so for them it's coming at a really bad time. But look, they are a team that should be up challenging every year with the squad and the starting 11 that they have, but probably have dropped points in games where they probably shouldn't, like the likes of a DLR or even say Wexford now at the weekend. They kind of, I wouldn't say made hard work for, but didn't do it the easy way, and that's maybe the games that they might not have gone and got the 3 points in. So for them, maybe they have turned the corner. But something we spoke about last year about them was keeping a clean sheet, you know, because it is the games where you win 1-0 where you're thinking, you look back when you've won a league and thinking, God, that was a huge 3 points. So for them, I think work on, you know, getting hard to beat, like conceding goal. They kind of gave Wexford an easy chance to score. So just really need to get that out of the game if you want to go on and fully challenge for a league this year and go all the way and win a league.
Yeah, as you said, the league is stop-start because, of course, next week is going to be huge. So 2 games against Poland, away first and then at home. But we'll preview that next Monday with Rachel. But for now, we'll catch you next week.